Welcome to the 15th episode of Vital Questions. As always, I'm your host, Guerrero, with
La co-host.
As you guys who might be watching at home on the YouTube channel, we're not in our usual studio. We're on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So, if there's a lot of, we're trying this on the road. We brought the equipment on the road. So please bear with us as always.
Hopefully there's no tech issues. If we have tech issues like in our normal setup, but it's fine. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. But today's episode is it's a unique one, I guess.
Yeah, it's a little different than what we normally do.
Yeah, usually we talk about, politics in the national sense.
Right.
But today we're getting a little bit into the micro of it.
Yeah, and intentionally, right? It's to
Mhm.
show people, as you probably saw from the title of the episode, it is to show people the importance of local elections
Mhm.
and to really use the upcoming New York City mayoral race as an example.
Mhm.
We're both I like to say native New Yorkers, right?
You more native than I'm native. I'm
Yeah,
a transplant native.
Yeah, but you were there for a good amount of time, right?
Yeah. I always say it's my formative years. New York City is always my formative years.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm like born and raised in New York, so New York till I die.
Mhm. Oh, trust me, we know. The New Yorker could be coming out.
Whatever.
Whatever. Coffee. Let me get my coffee before I do this interview.
No, but especially being from New York, growing up, and especially up until recently, I and a lot of people that I know were of the same mindset where it's like, oh, our votes don't matter. Oh, we're
Mhm.
Democrat. We're a Democratic city. We're super blue. A lot of people think New York State is really blue, which is a misconception.
Yeah.
Because outside of New York City and like Rochester and a couple of other pockets of New York, it tends to be really red. And it just happens to be our more highly populated cities kind of take it over the edge and make it blue.
It is insane when I went up to like northern New York that I was like, I'm sorry, I thought I went north, not south.
Right.
Like it is
Yeah.
redneck country.
Yeah, there's a big misconception about New York because everyone thinks New York is New York City. And a lot of people think it's just Manhattan when it's really New
Mhm.
York City is the 5 boroughs,
Mhm.
right? So we wanted to take this episode as an example of why voting matters and why also by default voting for the quote unquote Democrat or Republican, you thinking that they're aligned with your positions or views and values. That's not actually always the case.
We're gonna get into Adams later on. Hint, hint, spoiler alert.
Exhibit A.
But it's also, I also was very excited to do this episode about New York City. It's because, like we said before, and I'm not sure if I said it's on this podcast, but
Mhm.
with everything going on, it comes down to community. It comes down, like I said, every zip code, every block, your neighbors.
Yeah.
So what's more community than voting for your mayor?
Right.
Usually this is crazy because for New Yorkers, you don't realize like how much small towns like actually like how important a mayor is in a small town.
Mhm.
And because New York seems so big, it seems like the mayor's job is maybe irrelevant, or it might not really seem as powerful as it is.
Yeah.
But there is a lot more to it than
Yeah.
even the regular, New Yorker may realize.
Yeah, and it also depends on the city, right? Because in terms of what a mayor does, it varies depending on the particular city structure. You just hit on something really important, right? For smaller towns, a mayor may be more in the weeds of the day-to-day, depending on the structure. So for example, it can really mayors hit on a lot of different things that matter to us on a day-to-day basis. So they make policies about schools, public safety, transportation,
You want to pull
parks.
that up for us?
No,
Oh, this is just reading. Oh, there's nothing to
there's
pull
nothing
up.
to pull up.
Oh, okay, my bad.
That's why I produced this. And
Okay, I just sit there and look cute. Sorry, because I can't see the other screen. So usually, because we're on the road. But real quick, have we mentioned? I'm sorry, I'm gonna let you. We're mentioning that the election primary Tuesday.
We're getting to it.
Okay, great. June 24th in New York. So we're getting into all that. Okay,
We're just talking about what a mayor is, and we'll get
Right.
there. But yeah, really high level. That's just, and again, it depends on the structure of the particular city, right? So for example, these local officials sometimes also decide how your tax dollars are spent. They set budgets for schools, for emergency services, libraries, community projects, right? It just depends on the particular city. But we've seen lately, especially local officials have an even bigger impact, right? So especially with mayors and governors of particular blue cities and states that have really been kind of standing behind their people and trying to protect people. Because as we've seen, given this administration, that's really one of the most important things, right? So when you take people, you go from Greg Abbott, right, in Texas, who's given up Texas basically to this administration, compare that to
Well, like Greg Abbott was essentially like the blueprint to what Trump was going to do. So they kind of like fed into each other. He didn't
oh
just
well yeah
give it up to his administration. He also like laid the groundwork for this administration to be able to do its dirty deeds.
yeah, and I just said that as a comparison, right?
Yeah,
Because then you compare that to Mayor Brandon Johnson from Chicago,
dope.
who has come out and said explicitly, Chicago basically has to, quote, go as far as necessary, end quote, to protect the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are reportedly next, along with New York, Philadelphia, Northern Virginia, right, was another one.
Mm-hmm.
Seattle, I think, was another one,
Mm-hmm.
are the next on the quote unquote chopping block in terms of ICE raids. And they're planning on coming out and doing LA style raids in these bluer cities.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really important, especially now more than ever, to have local officials who will protect their people.
Yeah.
Also, you have the mayor of Newark, right? As we heard, he
Ras
was
Baraka. Love that name, by the way. It sounds like a character I pick in Mortal Kombat. Ras Baraka.
You know what's funny? I actually thought that too. I was thinking of, like
Baraka. I think it's Barakas.
it's like there's someone. Isn't it like a fighter? There's like was he a boxer? I don't know. That was like I thought that was like a something Baraka dude.
Yeah, I think there is a Baraka dude. I'm sorry, we're not.
And he was like
here.
fire. Like yeah, he was so cool. But anyways, yes. So Ras Baraka was recently arrested when he and a couple of other representatives tried to go to the ICE detention center in Newark and check in on how people were being treated in just conditions and literally doing his job.
Yeah. And also very importantly, from this story in Newark, as a mayor, the ICE facility went above him to reopen. They didn't get the proper permits. And look, maybe Ras Baraka is all worried about the proper permits and the zoning and everything that they have to do in order to slow down the process of this facility being opened, and try and, try to mitigate the pain through bureaucracy, sort of make it work your way for a bit. But ICE overstepped him,
right,
and reopened this facility without the mayor's full authority.
Right.
So that's why he went there to check, like, first of all, why you do this without me? I didn't approve this. And secondly, what are you doing to the people in there?
Right.
So this is a mayor that was standing up for the fact that his authority was being taken away by this administration.
Yeah. Which again, we keep seeing that more and more, that there is supposed to be state sovereignty, state individual authority to govern your state, right? There, we all kind of learn that in school. There is a federal level of government and there's a state level of government, and each are supposed to respect each other.
This is so weird. You know that, right? Because the right used to be the one that was all states' rights as a way to take away stuff. And now it is a little weird that the messaging is changing from the left being like states' right in order for us to keep our rights.
Well, the irony is when the left is using it, it is intentional to be what it was supposed to be, right? State sovereignty is a thing. State self-autonomy is a thing to an extent.
California has the right to choose, its emission levels, its laws governing LGBTQ, migrants, things like that.
Yeah, well,
federal is different.
Yeah, migrant fall, and unfortunately immigration and all that falls at the federal level.
Yeah.
And that is where this administration, and to be honest, that's why I think they've used immigration as their point at issue, because that's a federal issue. So if you then use that as a weapon to be like, oh my God, it's chaos everywhere because of these immigrants, then the federal government in that situation, if that were actually happening, yes, they're supposed to step in. If that were actually happening, if there was an actual invasion, and if but
going back to Rob, sorry, like co-host, you got a lot of research we gotta get through.
But no, it was just to show examples of different cities and different mayors, and things that they're doing in their respective cities and how important and impactful it is, right? So pivoting back to New York, right? Again, New York is its own kind of special thing because of the size of the city. So for New York especially, people can check out what the office of the mayor specifically says, right? I won't bore you with the details of this particular description, but just to summarize, the mayor's office in New York actually does do a lot of important things. It is responsible for managing the city's relations with federal, state, and local governing entities. So meaning the mayor is essentially the city's representative in all its dealings with the federal government. Right? So
yeah, major cities specifically
exactly
need to have that kind of communication with with the
its
federal government.
exactly, because with
Mhm.
its own governor, but depending on the issue at hand, mayors are involved more directly.
Right, right. Because like the mayor of Terre Haute isn't really too worried about the federal government in the way that the mayor of Boston, Chicago, or New York have to, or even LA.
Exactly. And
Mm.
especially when the federal government is targeting adversarially certain cities and certain states, it becomes even more important.
Wow. So that's why they had that congressional hearing with the mayors of the top cities in the country, essentially, Denver, Boston, Chicago, New York,
Right.
because those are the major metropolis. Karen Bass wasn't there, but but those are the major metropolis. I can see why they brought him there.
Yeah, and it was you've mentioned this before. It was intentional,
Yeah.
right? To try to show that they're quote unquote unfit for their roles and
Those
all
are people
that.
of color.
Yeah, and it's people of color, right? So it's the two prongs, right? It hits politically their sanctuary city status and all that, and then it also hits their racism
Mhm.
because they're able to do that,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So yeah, in addition to that, the mayor has the power to veto local laws that are enacted by the city council. In New York City, the mayor actually appoints criminal court judges, family court judges, and interim civil court judges.
Whoa.
Correct. So in terms of a representative that actually is a little bit more important to everyone's day to day,
Damn.
right? There's a little more. So they also prepare and administer. They kind of give out the city's annual budget, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like they're also responsible of cost allocation.
Schools.
Yeah, who's getting funding for what?
What schools?
And the last point that I wanted to flag is that they have the power to appoint and remove commissioners of more than 40 city agencies, right? So in terms of
Police.
who's heading up all these different agencies, they have the ability to put people in play for that. So it might seem at first glance that a mayor is just what's funny is that they keep referring to a mayor as a chief executive officer of a city. At first, I thought that was a joke when I read it,
No,
but it's actually referenced
yeah.
a bunch of different places. I'm like, oh, okay.
Okay, he's a CEO.
Yeah, I always think it's weird when there's corporate references and like government things. I'm like, we don't need to do that because government isn't a business. Like you just can't.
No, you can't.
You can't treat it like a business.
I told you that Trump is running this like a business.
I told you that.
No, because you were the one that was like, "Oh, that's right." Come, we had a little bit of okay.
I told you because I said that the reason why he's running it like a business because he literally got rid of overhead. And the reason I know this as a corporate lawyer.
Oh yeah, it was the flip side. It was the flip side. It was the flip side. I'm sorry.
Aware.
It was the flip side.
I know.
I apologize, audience. La cojos, I succeed.
I know.
Damn.
Say less.
New York.
Right, exactly. Anywho, no, but for everyone else's purposes, what I was mentioning is that this administration is treating it exactly as a business.
Yeah.
If a business is quote unquote failing financially, which again, the government had a bunch of issues, our economy had a bunch of issues, but it's not. The failure wasn't in the business sense, and they're treating it as such, right? So you cut overhead. That means you get rid of as many people as possible, as many employees as possible, right? So we've seen that left and right.
Wow, and you keep those here working harder.
You then look at where quote unquote inefficiencies are, i.e. Doge, but the way that they were doing it was for malicious reasons because our government already had a Doge kind of committee called the Oversight Committee that they actually look for unnecessary
spending. It's not
spending.
that cool. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. The name Oversight Committee is dope.
It's not about the name.
It's the branding.
It's, I guess,
but they did have the oversight committee.
But my point is that they're treating this like they actually are treating it like a business, and that's the problem. Because business and these kind of corporations don't have in mind human issues, like any kind of sense of humanity, because that's not part of the business model, right? Like, who cares? Unfortunately, who cares about humanity when money's suffering?
Yeah,
and that's why we can't treat government like a business. You just can't.
Unless it's the kind of business where all the employees are part owners in the actual business, and we all have a stake in its success,
like a democracy.
Yeah, exactly. That's the word. Sorry, it's we haven't had it in a while in this country, so I forgot.
Yeah, that's funny. So now that we know generally what the New York City mayor is in charge of, and there's there's a lot more to it. I just didn't want to have a laundry list of all the different responsibilities. But those were a couple of the ones that I saw that I thought were really important, especially given this upcoming election.
Yeah.
So the other point that we wanted to talk about was the fact that just because someone lists themselves as a Democrat does not mean that they align with your views.
Yeah.
Right. Case in point, and perfect exhibit A is the current mayor. So Eric Adams, right? So this is a USA Today article that had the timeline of the allegations against Eric Adams.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's, I think, a good amount of people that aren't aware of the things that have happened. So he, in the same way that a lot of other politicians have done some terrible things. And terrible, I guess, is excessive because it's like bribery and things like that.
He's abused the
His
power
power.
of his office,
Correct.
and actually, Mayor Adams, out of a lot of the things that he's done, we'll get into it, but he contributed to a lot of the anti-immigrant sentiment that we're
Oh
having
yeah,
here today.
yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know how much he realizes it or not, but history will not be kind to him.
Well, the most ironic part of it all, well, obviously he's like a black man, so it's kind of insane to have someone who's also a fellow minority to be out here kind of like saying terrible things about minorities.
But they legitimize the white supremacist ideology even more than white supremacists can, and that's the dangerous part of when people of color.
Who's they?
Huh?
When you say they, who's they?
So like, when I say like somebody like people of color, like somebody
Mhm.
like Mayor Eric or Candace Owens,
Mhm.
perfectly. When Candace Owens says black people are lazy, which they're not, they're
Mhm.
not. I'm not saying anything like that, but when Candace Owens says something like that, and a white person says, black people are lazy, a white person, you're racist, but Candace Owens, white people can kind of hide behind Candace Owens and be like, you see, if a black person's saying
Oh,
it,
gotcha, fine. Yeah.
then it has to have some gravitas, it has to have some reality, or else why would she? So whenever people of color, like Mayor Eric Adams, saying that like immigrants are gonna destroy New York City,
Mhm.
it it legitimizes white supremacist talking points even more than when a white supremacist can say it,
Mhm.
because they can hide behind the fact that a person of color said it.
Yeah. And it makes it even worse when it's an elected official, right? And
Yeah,
it's a person that's
exactly.
in a position of power, so that's even worse. So I'm going back to one of the worst mayors that we've had, unfortunately.
I
And
haven't gone through the whole history of New York, but I can put them up there.
I mean, it's I'm sure it's not like the worst, but it's also really hypocritical that this man always shows up to every minority party and wants to be in the mix and partying it up and doing bachata and like, oh, I love Latinos and blah 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 and having
Gave Diddy the
mango.
key to the city.
The dude lives in Dykeman basically, like he's always uptown trying to party it up. Yes. He's been in mad clubs. Like it's just that's the running joke. Where is Mayor Adams? Not in his office. He's at a party. Like
Oh
that's
my
the running
god,
joke because it's a thing and it's so true.
that's so crazy.
That's why it's such an even bigger slap in the face the way he's done it, all of this.
Right.
Like it's not only have you used us for your fun, but now
Mhm.
you literally sold us down the
Mhm.
river. So this is going back to the timeline from USA Today, starting from 2016, where was already elected the Brooklyn Borough president. Adams reportedly gets free upgrades to business class for 2 round trip flights from New York to India via Turkey. That's like one of the first things everyone keeps like flagging.
Right.
2017, Adams reportedly receives business class tickets for round three round trip, I'm guessing, from New York to France, Turkey,
Via
and
Turkey.
China, and a heavily discounted stay in Bentley
Mhm.
Suite St. Regis. He got more business class tickets, right? So it seems to be a lot of his bribery things were based on travel.
Yeah. All
Um,
through Turkey. There was like a report that he actually did longer flights just because he went through Turkey. Like he had to go he had to go to Atlanta, but he made a pit stop in Turkey. Like,
and it's but that's the thing, right? Why Turkey? And then that's where the allegations started coming, like,
right.
oh, you have connections to the Turkish
Right.
government. Why is it that it's all tied to Turkey? Again, so back in 2018, prosecutors said Adams, who by then already said that he wanted to run for mayor, accepted and sought illegal campaign contributions to his 2021 election, quote, as well as other things of value from foreign nationals. So again, more bribery. 2019, more flights. 2020 officially announces his mayoral campaign. And 2021, he wins the mayoral campaign.
Mhm.
And that same year, he got a free upgrade to business class
Congratulations, my man.
for 2 on a round trip from New York to Ghana, as well as free meals and great. It's ridiculous. This is where it gets interesting.
Mhm.
April 2023, Adams complained about Trump's presence in New York and attacked House Republicans for using the city to score political points about crime.
Mm.
Interesting. September 2024, Adams was indicted and pleaded not guilty to 5 federal criminal charges of accepting bribes, wire fraud, and illegal campaign contributions.
Mhm.
October 2024, at a charity dinner, Trump publicly told Adams, we were persecuted, Eric. I was persecuted, and so are you, Eric. Adams declined the opportunity to disavow Trump's support. He could
Mhm.
have easily been like, "Don't talk to me." Like,
Mhm.
December 2024, Adams met with Trump's incoming border czar,
Czar.
Tom Homan. January 2025, Adam meets with President Trump at Mar-a-Lago in Florida. Same month, they report that he attended the president's inauguration, all that. September 2025, the DOJ reportedly orders federal prosecutors to dismiss corruption charges against Adams.
Mhm.
And I believe that's where we end. Yeah. So it is really funny that USA Today, in the way that most publications present information that we've talked about before, that it's very matter of fact because they don't want to get sued and attacked by this administration. But I do love that they end it there, which is
Yeah.
like, and that's the end of the timeline. We'll let you
Well,
all.
yeah. And let me tell you some of the points in that timeline that they will not show you.
Mhm.
Okay. And this isn't conspiracy theory. This is you can look at the timelines. When Mayor Eric Adams, because we saw him say that he hated that whatever, that he had a problem with Republicans trying to use the city for political points and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The second more information started coming out that he was under investigation,
Mhm.
the more he started using any opportunity of using migrants as a talking point for the crime that was happening in the city.
Yeah.
The fact that he lied about Venezuelans beating up cops when it came out that it was the police who started it and they were defending themselves, but he used that story, and that to me has always been the tipping point on when the rhetoric changed from these are good people who are here to work to look at these migrants in the streets not doing anything with their lives and just causing trouble. And Mayor Eric Adams had a lot to do with that shifting of reality and perception.
Yeah. Especially when you're the mayor of New York City, that's known as the melting pot for a reason. That, again, as New York's like that for a reason, because you can't tell me that the diversity in my city is not beautiful. Like, you cannot tell me that, like, and for the mayor that's representing the city to be out here and making those statements, again, you are a representative.
Yeah.
You're supposed to represent what the city stands for. New York City, as we've seen, does not stand for that shit.
Yeah.
I can tell you, and as a representative in New York
Mhm.
City, I can tell you for a fact, there's no one, not no one, but a lot of people are not in favor of what's happening.
Right.
And again, friendly reminder, New York City is supposed to be a sanctuary city.
Mhm.
And if it was, in the same way that Chicago is, the mayor should be doing the similar things that
The
Chicago's mayor.
But Adams is not, because
Correct.
Adams, just like Trump, is scapegoating migrants to deflect from his own, criminal activity. So this is where, again, Mayor Eric Adams absolutely threw the entire immigrant community under the bus
Mhm.
so he can get that pardon. We are in a huge problem right now, and
Mhm.
Mayor Eric Adams, I think, deserves about 25% of that.
Oh, for sure. And to that point, not only do I agree with you, but so do several Manhattan federal prosecutors who resigned
Ooh.
and accused the administration of quid pro quo, which is essentially exchanging favors, right? That's Adams saying, yeah, you have free reign over my city. Get all the migrants that you want to, so long as you drop this case against me.
Mhm.
And sure enough, the DOJ dropped it. And sure enough, Adams, we've seen no motion on trying to protect migrants at all. Only BS statements about, yeah, if you're here legally, you're fine. But that's BS,
That's
first of all.
BS. We've seen it.
We
They're
see
going
it
to
everywhere.
courthouses.
Correct. You're going to courthouses. The people that are here, quote unquote, legally, the people that are here trying to do it the quote unquote legal way, y'all not stopping that either.
No.
So let's stop the lies. Let's stop the BS about this. So pivoting.
Sorry, just again, it also hurts to be, it hurts to be let down like that by a person of color.
Well, and that's why I think Adams is such an important example, right? Because, and I mentioned to you before, that again, as a New Yorker, whenever I voted,
Mhm.
I've always been a Democrat, and
Yeah.
admittedly, whoever was on my general election
Who was on the
ticket,
ticket?
and we'll explain the difference between primaries and general election for whoever is not familiar. Whoever was on my general election ticket, because I didn't even vote for the
Mhm.
primaries, which is why I think this topic is so important, because I've been guilty of it too. And I consider myself like knowledgeable enough, or I thought I was, where I'm like, oh, well, whoever's on, it's a
It's
Democrat.
a Democrat.
So of course they're going to have the same values. No,
Mhm.
they're not.
Mm-mm.
And now more than ever, people are lying about their position because they know how controversial it is to say that you're a Republican or conservative or any kind of support to that side,
Mhm.
because the leader of that side is a demon,
Mhm.
right? So a lot of people are also lying.
They're saying that, because they're saying Democrat, which is at this day and age, sometimes Democrat can just mean Republican light.
Correct.
Like Adams is actually he's Republican
He's
at this point.
Republican. He's an undercover Republican.
He's undercover Republican. I think he might have switched parties. Don't quote me on that.
Well, we'll get into how he's running and what.
Let's go. Yeah, let me keep you rolling. You know I could always deviate us. But like co-host, back on the road.
So going back to what's coming up, right? So the primary election in New York is this coming Tuesday, June 24th, but early voting is already open. So for New Yorkers, if you have time, please just go vote. Go vote this weekend. Vote Monday. Like I think there's the heat wave and all that. Bring a fan. Bring some water. But
do
don't
ice bucket challenge. Do 2 in a row.
But it's so important because as we'll get into a little more details,
Mm-hmm.
just because someone's a Democrat doesn't mean they're a good candidate. And right now there are 11 Democratic candidates that are running for this primary election.
You got choices, baby.
Well, not all the choices are necessarily the best, but
but at least choices.
Correct, yeah. And so going back to what a primary is, right? Primary is when you elect who's going to represent your political party for the general election.
And it's crazy that not a lot of people vote in primaries. I didn't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe until 4 years ago, I didn't realize how important primaries were to pick the person who's going to be the person.
Yeah, because I just think politicians have become progressively more outlandish, and again, having people like Cheeto in office, it helps them. I think I'd have the perspective like, oh yeah, we can do whatever because he's doing whatever, right? And more so people on the right side than the left for sure, but even on the left, or what is quote unquote the left, when you have people like Adams who have taken advantage of the situation. Like I think just as time has gone on, we have to be significantly more critical of who is in office. Because there's a lot between the migrant situation, between the advent of technology and how it's blowing up, and AI and data privacy and intellectual property, right? Like there's so much happening right now that our representatives really do have to align with what we want them to be representing us with.
We are in the 21st century, and because of a lot of our politicians are so old, they're still stuck on the mentality that like, oh, we need to worry about tariffs on Xerox machines, and you're like, what, man? We're on Twitch right now, bro. What are you talking about? Are you regulating PayPal?
Well, and that's the point, right? Like we don't want to be ageist. It's not about that. It's just about, this isn't the time to necessarily go by the traditional book of how things need to be done, right? We need to have people in office who, in the face of fascism, in the face of borderline dictatorism,
through AI and through this technology,
dictatorism, you need to have people who are going to stand up against the BS, people who aren't afraid to go against the established Democrats, right? Because that's the other thing that I learned recently. I didn't know about the quote unquote establishment. It was something that AOC has mentioned before. So I was like, what the hell? What are established Democrats? Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, you didn't know there were families that were like legacy Democrats, legacy, candidates.
Right. And that thereby people vote for simply because they're legacy, and they think, oh, well, so-and-so's father was
so that must make him, like RFK Jr. had a lot of clout because of that's why he joined Trump, because he could have ciphered off a lot of votes from Trump.
Right. Yeah. Which is insane, because you hear this man speak and he sounds like a freaking motor engine or something.
He sounds like screws in a dryer.
Literally.
You can make fun of him because he's a piece of shit. So.
Well, right. And also substantively, what he's saying makes no sense either. No sense. Right. So, but on the bright side, in terms of the importance of primaries in New York, early voting has already surpassed earlier figures. So they were actually double. Day one numbers were double what they were 4 years ago. So New Yorkers are turning out, and again, very proud.
It's a time now where if you're not politically engaged, what are you doing?
Right.
I think that we're going to see a huge turnout for this election.
Right.
And we're seeing it for actually all elections across the country, even in small, runoff elections and stuff. People are turning out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, again, very happy that people are coming out for the election, because especially in New York, and it's such a major city, and we already heard that it's potentially next up on the ice raid.
While you bring that up, let me tell you a little something that I heard, and this is anecdotally, so maybe if you're like, nah, let's not do that. But I'm hearing that Trump is quietly already starting to put National Guards in Florida. without
That's not surprising.
they're not there as national guards to help with immigration, but they're there to help with administrative processing
Hmm.
is what they're calling it. So you see, like, you also have governors and mayors all through Florida who are already, complying
Yeah,
with all
well,
these orders.
yeah, and that's also not surprising. Like,
Hmm.
I'm sure they were already complying before it was an order. Like, it was just they got
Yeah.
an email and were told, "Hey, let's violate a bunch of human rights and let's do it." Cool, because we're Florida and we're the South. Like,
And
that's
it's like, you
insane.
had me at violate.
Right. And again, it sucks because I know I'm saying Florida and I know we're saying, we'll say different southern states, definitely acknowledging that there are people in these spaces that are trying to fight against this because I
Yeah.
also feel bad for like Floridians that aren't like.
We know a lot of
Yeah,
organizations and people
wonderful
who are
people.
putting in the work to try and help Floridians,
Yeah.
even if they're people who do not agree with them. At the end of the day, these community leaders understand that everybody's gonna FAFO. Do
Right.
you know what I mean? Those people who FAFO, like, they're gonna need help, and it's kind of heartwarming to see these organizations being like, look, even if Trump supporters come reaching out, we're gonna help them because we need to help move them away from that.
Right.
There's a lot
Exactly.
of good people doing the work, so it's not like, put Florida under this blanket that everybody. That's how
Yeah.
we got here in the first place.
Right.
When
Exactly.
you put it all under one blanket, then you can't leave space for those people who are there trying to do the work.
Yeah. So this is a shout out to everyone in very red spaces that are trying to do the good work and you're seen. We appreciate you.
Yeah,
Please keep on fighting.
because that's actually, and before we move on real quick, that's actually who, and it's not being reported, that's actually who's getting hit the worst, is red states with blue cities,
Hmm.
Miami, Omaha, these kinds of places. So these organizations are even more important, more than ever. Indianapolis, like, these are the kind of cities that are really, like, not getting a lot of reporting, but there's a lot of activity in these
Yeah.
cities.
Yeah, for sure. So pivoting back to the New York mayoral race, New York is doing a really interesting change in terms of how it's voting. It's doing ranked choice voting, which I hadn't heard of, or I thought I hadn't, and then I looked at why this came about, and it said in a 2019 ballot measure, 73.5% of New York City voters voted yes for ranked choice voting, and that's why this came into play. As I said that, I was like, I feel like I might have voted yes for that. Like, I feel like I was still in New York at the
Yeah,
time, and I was like,
yeah.
"I think I probably did vote," and I'm like, "Yeah," the way they explained it. But anyways, it's a little complicated, but it works. Okay, so basically people out of the 11 choices, which we'll get to, people will rank their choices from 1 to 5, and then you don't friendly reminder to everyone and really important note, you don't have to rank everyone, just the ones you actually wanna vote for, right? So,
Oh, so you
like,
gotta go 1 through 5. You can just be like, one, who we're gonna get into,
yeah,
Mamdani, two, other guy.
yeah, and you can do 2 votes, you can do just keep in
Wow.
mind,
Oh, I like that.
yeah, that you actually don't have to use all 5, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can, just vote for the ones you actually wanna vote for. So then the way it works is after you vote, right, all first choice picks will be counted first, right? So in terms of everyone's first choice, that's what they're gonna look at.
Mhm.
If one candidate from that tabulation, from that calculation of everyone's first choice gets more than half of the vote, more than 50%, they win the primary race. They're now the Democratic nominee,
Great.
right? If one person from calculating all the number one pick votes does not get the majority, then the candidate with the fewest first choice votes is out, right? And then those votes go to the next choice on each of those ballots.
Okay.
So it's a little complex, right? So okay. So let's say hypothetical situation is no one gets from first, like from the look, just looking at
Yeah, yeah,
everyone's number one vote,
yeah,
no one gets anything,
yeah.
right? Like no one gets more
No
than
one
50,
get 50%,
no one
right?
gets more than 50%.
Okay.
Okay. So then, sorry, I have to like go back and double check too. So then the from that first selection, the candidate with the fewest first choice votes is out. So like let's say there's a candidate that gets no
Right.
number one, yeah,
They're out.
they're out
Right,
automatically,
right.
right? So now we're down to like
In
hypothetically
the 4.
10, 10, or yeah, like 4 top
Yeah.
choice, whatever. And then from the votes, what is it? And those votes, right, that the fewest first choice candidate got go to the next choice on each of those ballots, right?
Mm,
So then let's say your number 5 vote gets voted out. Whatever the whatever amount of votes that person got goes to each person's next choice.
okay.
So I so it's a little complicated. There's a video, it's like 57 seconds. We can like
Let's
watch it
watch
too.
it. Oh, we're gonna have to switch tabs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But
While our co-host does that, let's see, because I think a little video saying this is how.
well, but it the reason
Well,
why
I think we'll be all right.
I
I think
found
we'll
it
be all
no, yeah, the reason why I found it a little more confusing,
right.
the video, is because they use boroughs as examples
Oh,
because they
okay.
didn't want to call out a particular candidate, right?
Okay.
There's 11 people, so of course they're not going to use anyone as an example to show
Mhm.
favoritism.
Ah,
So they use the 5 boroughs of the city as examples of candidates.
nice.
So that's the only thing to keep in mind as we're watching this.
Okay.
So let me add the share screen.
Yeah. So, but it is essentially it is a way to, like I said, because when Trump, both time he's running, you know, he he always gets like 30% of the vote, 34% of the votes, and the problem is that there's always so many people in the field that they start getting like 6%, 5%, 7%. So it's not, so Trump always wins by just needing 35% or whatever.
Right, which is another point of the rationale for ranked choice voting.
Mhm.
It's so your vote counts even if your top choice doesn't win,
Right.
right? Because if you just get one vote and it's like, oh well, my, let's say Mamdani ends up not winning, but I really like, let's say, Lander or something, and I voted him number 2, so at least now my number 2 vote is getting counted, or my number, so like
Yeah.
it's a way to allocate your vote, so it's not just one vote.
Yeah. Let's see what these.
Okay.
Look at these.
In New York City, everyone's got a oh, maybe it's the bright lights of Manhattan, the Bronx's bold spirit, Brooklyn's creative vibe, Queens's amazing diversity, or
Yeah.
the charm of Staten Island. But what
Mm.
if you don't want to choose just one? That's where ranked choice voting comes in.
Mm.
Instead of picking only one favorite, you rank your choices. Put your top pick as number 1, your second favorite as number 2, and so on. You don't have to rank them all, just the ones you like. Here's how it works. First, everyone's number 1 pick is counted. If one borough gets more than half the votes, it wins. But if no one gets a majority, the borough with the fewest votes is out. And those votes go to the next choice on each of those
Okay.
ballots. That process keeps going until one borough has more than half. The winner? The one most people can agree on. Ranked choice voting makes your vote count even if your top choice doesn't win.
Wow.
Want to see how it works? Try a sample ballot.
All right. Well, yeah, you
That's
can.
yeah. That's impressive.
It
And that's
it
actually,
works. Yeah, it
believe it or
works.
not, that's how we got Adams. That's how, New York City got Adams, because I saw this great video about, after the protests. See, that's the thing. A lot of New Yorkers will also claim that they're Democrat, but want to be like tough on crime, and like the liberals, that they want to act like they're progressive and stuff like that, but really they don't like black and brown people that much.
Right.
So Mayor Eric Adams, being a black cop, gave honestly, a lot of people who saw the Black Lives Matter movement as a disturbance and chaos, a shield to hide behind, because they elected a black cop who was going to bring law and order back into the city.
Right.
And that's how ranked choice voting kind of got Mayor Eric Adams to move to the top, because at least everybody was like, well, we need more protection in the city because of what's happening with the BLM. And he's a black man, so he can not race his way, crack some skulls.
And yeah, and that's the thing. That's a misconception. That's why it's
There's nothing worse than a black cop. Well, a person of color cop, because a Latino cop could also be the same way. They're worse.
okay.
In ways.
And in this, we slightly differ, because yes, I agree that there are a lot of bad cops out there, but I personally know of a couple of what I, in my opinion, call good cops. Like I know why they went into the force. I know they actually genuinely just want to protect people and be the hero. And so and again, I always say this too. We've had this conversation where I'm just like, if someone gets robbed, if someone gets shot, it's not, who are you calling? You're still calling the cops. So I'm more of the mindset, and this is a whole separate conversation, but I'm more of the mindset of I don't think we need to dismantle everything. No, I think we need to restructure a lot of things. I think we need to reallocate funds.
Yes.
That goes to a lot of law enforcement, because a lot of things aren't being used properly, clearly. But things still do happen. So I'm,
Well, let's keep it more to Mayor Adams, because there is reports of him when he was a kid figuring out that he got in trouble because he was sort of running with the wrong crew, and then he saw police officers, the way they could beat up people in the streets and get away with it. So in his mind, he was like, the best gang in the city is the police.
Yeah.
Which is why he joined it. He said it, and this is his words.
Yeah.
So that's where, at least with him, it's one of those situations where people get into this job to abuse, and Eric Adams has been able to move up the rank because he's been very good at weaponizing the police.
Yeah, and clearly, giving favors and getting favors. So
yeah.
So just pivoting back to the election, let's meet the candidates. Let me share screen here. No, great. So in alphabetical order per CBS News, first up is New York City Council Speaker Adrienne Adams. So she's already obviously in a position of authority for the city. What happened?
I was like, no relation to Eric, right?
No.
Because
I was like, what's up with your face?
I was like, is it a nepotism thing that
No,
he's getting
no,
his
no.
cousin in there?
That's funny. No, yeah, it's so funny right there. Eric Adams, no relation. Like it's just making it clear.
Good.
Yeah, no,
okay.
I knew that already, but I'm also glad that CBS is like no.
No relation.
But she seems really wonderful. She has been trying to make efforts against the ICE raids and situations. Unfortunately, hasn't been getting enough traction in her race. She is hoping to be the first woman of color New York City mayor, which would be wonderful. But unfortunately, isn't seem to be a top contender right now. Next up, we have former State Assemblyman Michael Blake. So someone else who's on the ticket, but he also isn't on the top running. So we're gonna kind of like skim through everyone.
We'll give you everyone.
Not to be disrespectful at all, just because we are being conscious of time.
Right.
Next up is this guy, former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who is unfortunately and somehow the top contender right now, which makes absolutely no sense. And we'll remind people why it makes no sense. Scrolling down, New York City Comptroller Brad Lander, who most recently was in the news because I think we all probably have heard that he was trying to accompany migrants in their court hearings, right? And he unfortunately was arrested while trying to question officials as to whether or not they had a warrant to detain one of the migrants that he was escorting.
And I think with his detainment, this becomes the fifth Democrat to now be detained while trying to do stuff for immigrants, like either take them to court or, try and have some oversight on facilities that we saw in Newark where the mayor was detained. So this is the fifth, and it cannot be normalized, people.
Yeah.
Padilla, all this stuff. Come on now.
Yeah, let's just look at the moment where agents are basically manhandling both him and the migrant, and you hear him in the video asking for a warrant.
Where is the warrant? You don't have authority to arrest U.S. citizens. You don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens. You don't have to. I'm not obstructing. I'm standing right here in the hallway. I asked to see the judicial
listen to that.
I'm asking that you for a judicial warrant.
That's important.
Yeah,
you don't have authority to arrest a U.S. citizen. You do not have the authority.
You're an immigration enforcement agency
To arrest a U.S. citizen.
Correct.
Who is
who's a representative
who's escorting people to their immigration court hearings that they have the right to go to.
Correct. Who was doing nothing other than asking, let me see your warrant in order for you to detain this person, because that is what the law says.
And that's when they got aggressive.
Correct.
You want to see a warrant? I got a warrant for you right here. It's called hand and cuff.
Literally, like that's exactly what they were doing.
That's what they do.
Yeah. And on the bright side, though, and I say bright side very loosely, but fortunately, the charges were dropped against Lander because, of course, they were trying to
intimidate.
Yeah, put charges on him. But but he was. Let me just share.
Obstruction is the case that they gave me.
Oh my god. Sorry. So Lander was accompanying the person that he was trying to help was named Edgardo. And he was accompanying him as part of an organized effort to shield immigrants from agents, right? It wasn't only him at the courthouse. There were a couple of other representatives trying to help people. And this was the response that they got. So Brad, props to you. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, he's also not the top two.
You're not gonna. But hey,
don't say it like that. That's mean.
Hey, you could rank choice number 3.
Right, exactly.
But honestly, Brad, thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
And it's very important. And it just
it just shows the effort. Like it just shows that people are trying.
Every drop in the bucket is important.
Exactly. So going back, so next up is State Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani. So I think we'll dive a little bit deeper because he fortunately is number 2 in terms of the current polls as of when I last saw them. So we'll pivot back to Mamdani. Next up, we have State Senator Zelnor Myrie.
Mm-hmm.
He unfortunately also is not necessarily at the
Mhm.
at the top.
Mm-hmm.
We have State Senator Jessica Ramos,
Mm-hmm.
who's also running. Former New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer is also running.
Mm-hmm.
And then businessman Whitney Tilson.
Okay, Whitney. What does he
So
run?
he's listed as an investor and civic activist.
Okay.
But
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go on, Whitney.
all right.
Go on, Whitney.
This is why we don't let you research, because you just, as you
just
research,
stuck
you
on
would just be
Whitney.
making jokes the entire time, like not even. Anyways,
Come on, Whitney.
come on, Whitney.
Okay, so those are our candidates.
Yeah, so those are our candidates.
amazing. And
So-
a lot of people of color.
But what you'll see is Eric Adams isn't on there. So at
This
first,
is what I thought too.
yeah. So at first I thought he wasn't running, and I was like, oh, okay, good, because you know that you're a scumbag, and of course no one's going to vote for you. What he's doing is he's not participating in the Democratic primary. He's not running as a Democrat. He's running as an independent on purpose to make sure that he ends up in the November general election. So the general election is where I think we all know at this point where you pick your candidate for the office in question.
Wow.
Right. So if you run as an independent is what it sounds, right? The independent, to be part of an independent party, you don't have constituents to vote you in, all that stuff, right? You just show up on the ballot in the general election.
And he's hoping people are not listening enough. Then the general election, all they see is Adams, and they'll just re-elect him.
Correct. Sometimes people don't read well, like pay attention to the details
Yeah.
and think like, oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, Adams. Yeah, I am voting for Adams.
Yeah, and maybe some people party with Adams and we're like, oh yeah, he's cool. Let me just, because unfortunately
Yeah.
that's how sometimes people vote.
You know what? He did buy me a shot over at, the 50-50 club or whatever.
But that's what I mean. Like these people are crazy. Like please don't, because he bought you a shot. Like just don't be voting for people like that.
Oh my God.
So let's pivot. Let's focus on the two main candidates. Right.
So again, he's sneaky for running independent because he knows that Democrats are not going to fully. So he's hoping to get a few Democrats, a few independents, and a few Republicans.
Yeah, exactly.
Enough of a coalition to win.
Yeah. So let's start with someone positive.
Let's start with positivity.
So Zohran Mamdani. A little bit about him. He's the first South Asian man to serve in the New York State Assembly, as well as the first Ugandan and only the third Muslim to ever be a member of the New York State Assembly. So a lot of firsts and a lot of like representation that he's coming with.
I didn't even know he was part of already a government.
He's an assemblyman.
I had no idea
Yeah.
because the way other candidates have been talking about his lack of experience, I thought he was just like straight off
like
the
a Joe
streets.
Schmo. Yeah.
Yeah, just be like, I want to do this.
Well, I think they're saying he has lack of experience because he hasn't ran a city, he hasn't ran a whatever, and because he and Cuomo are being put next to each other.
In comparison.
Correct. And Cuomo is a former governor, right? Like that's one of the biggest sticking points, because really they don't have much on him, to be honest.
Yeah.
And that's why.
Yeah.
And that's the funny thing. Like, of course you're going to go after the fact that he doesn't. Yeah. How do you get experience?
Yeah.
Like he has to at some point, right? And we've already seen time and time and again that lack of experience doesn't mean that you're not capable for the job.
Yeah.
And who we have seen in power and take advantage of that power is Cuomo.
Yeah.
And who we've actually seen what he does with said power is Cuomo. But we'll pivot to that a little later.
Wow, you know what? It's true. The more experience you have, the more you're able to weaponize this government to your liking.
Correct.
That's why Trump 2.0 is more dangerous than the first, because he wasn't a politician the first, but the second time he knew.
Right. New Yorkers. So what are we doing here? So why would we, again, vote in Cuomo 2.0? But let's focus on, let's focus on the positive person.
My bad. Let's go. Sorry, like co-host.
So he was born in Uganda. He moved to New York City with his family when he was 7. He's a graduate of the New York City public school system. Same here. Yeah. We out here. We survived.
We can read.
Oh my God. And received his bachelor's in Africana Studies from Bowdoin College. Yeah. Zohran worked as a foreclosure prevention housing counselor.
I think I used that prevention. Because you said foreclosure. I was like, oh my God. You said prevention. I was like, oh my God. That sentence brought me back.
Right. Where he helped low-income homeowners of color across Queens fight off eviction and stay in their homes.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, he hasn't had governing experience.
Mm-hmm.
But what he does have is being in the weeds and in the way that a mayor in New York City could, especially in this time, kind of needs to be. Right. Like we can't have a mayor that's just like a figurehead and just sitting and chilling, or maybe hanging out in Dykeman and chilling, right? Like we can't have a mayor like that. We need to have someone who is not playing games, who's not trying to take advantage of a situation.
And I know we keep saying that it's a little cheesy or whatever, but like, and I know probably every generation goes, man, New York has lost its essence. New York has lost its essence. A lot of people who make New York the cultural hub that it has been, for decades, centuries, whatever, is because of people who live there, like not just the rich, but the average person who adds to the culture and brings in.
It's not the rich. I can tell you from experience. It's minority
Yeah.
culture that makes New York.
Yeah.
It's because every restaurant you go to, unless you're going to a dive bar where you're gonna get some burgers and fries, what are you eating? You're eating everything that's out.
Dive bar. You can't get a dive bar is PBRs and urine smells.
That's disgusting. But like, if you really put it in perspective, everything that y'all love about New York, well, not everything, but like 99% of it
does not come from the billionaires.
No, it does not come from the billionaires. What the billionaires do is fund money and usually exploit the people that are naturally either talented or gifted or have culture or are coming from a culture-rich place.
Remember when hip hop was born?
Exactly.
It was not in the in the Upper West Side.
Exactly. So I just feel like there's this huge misconception. I'm definitely one of the people that feels like New York has lost its soul, unfortunately. I still love it. I will always love my city, but it's not the same, right?
Yeah.
And it is because of transplants kicking people that were the ones that created the culture.
Yeah.
They were the ones that were there. So when you get to lose all those people and now you have people from, not saying that it's a bad thing, right? Different walks of life diversity is important, but it's not, you're losing diversity because now the transplants are coming from the same spaces.
Well, don't get it twisted. Transplant had always come from like Ohio and things like that. But what it is now more affluent transplants are coming there. You know what I mean? Because it's a city for the rich.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's people who come from like Ohio, from like well off, they're paying $3,000 a month for a 1-bedroom. Like real artists cannot afford that. Real people who want to come to New York, like it used to be the place where you escape if you were from a small town that didn't accept like your gender or whatever, like the way you identify yourself. And it's not that anymore.
Correct. Yeah. So if you want it to be that, I think it's, again, be hypercritical of who the candidates are.
Exactly.
So a little bit more about Zohran Mamdani. So he has been supported by Senator Bernie Sanders and Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, AOZ, have both come out and publicly supported Mamdani, and just wanted to pull up as essentially what he's running on. So this is a quote from Bernie Sanders. So Zohran Mamdani is running an inspirational grassroots campaign centered on the construction of 200,000 new affordable housing units, a rent freeze, free public buses, cutting fines and fees for small businesses, investing in citywide mental health services, city-owned grocery stores, universal free childcare, and a minimum wage increase. He will pay for this agenda by asking corporations and the richest 1% of New Yorkers to pay their fair share in taxes. Unlike the corporate Democrat establishment, Zohran is funding his campaign largely through small dollar donations, including more than 27,000 individual contributions.
Wow.
To the point that they've actually maxed out the amounts that they can accept. And of course, because they're not skeevy and creepy, they aren't creating what you shared were PACs and like these kind of like side organizations in order to fund money through. And then now they're just focusing on literally grassroots effort. They're going door to door and just trying to get to know people.
I'm hooked on his TikToks.
Right.
Like Mamdani is a amazing TikToker, just personality. And I know that I don't want to go with the personality cult, but he does have a nice blend of being both a good politician, the way he just breaks down what his policies are, and also a real human being.
Right. Yeah. And that's like he also seems like a New York, like seems like a guy I went to high school with.
That's what it is. Like for the first time I'm seeing a politician, I'm like, yo, you act like we do, goofy, silly, smart. Like you don't have to be this serious thing all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. You do serious work.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really what matters. Like I think there's a lot of candidates are more focused on the pomp and circumstance of process and not focused too much on the actual job itself.
Yeah.
Because I don't care how much you follow decorum and don't ruffle feathers and whatever the hell if you're still letting people get kidnapped off the street.
Yeah.
Like, because that's what's happening here. So yeah, unfortunately, it hasn't, for as much as we really like him, it hasn't been going that great for him. Because yes, he's number 2 and has fortunately gotten a lot of support, but he actually has been getting a good amount of death threats as well. So just sharing screen.
Yeah, especially for his background and everything. And also his mom's a director. I think a writer or a director. I don't know if I had seen the movie. It was a Denzel Washington movie. I know people in there screaming like they're watching Jeopardy. It was like, it was blah, blah, blah.
So there's been reports that he's been receiving a bunch of death threats as part of all this, unfortunately. And he, he's in the recent weeks, especially, there's been a threat to even blow up his car.
Whoa.
The irony is he doesn't drive. Apparently he doesn't have a car. That's what, like, when I read that, I was like, I feel like his office would make that joke. Be like, he doesn't have a car.
Like, we're going to blow up his bike.
Yeah.
Bicycle.
So he has, unfortunately gotten some, not the best, but yeah, sorry, I just lost my.
No, that's okay. No, and it's, of course, has to do with his background and religion and things like that. That people, again, in a city like New York, we've seen a lot of Trump supporters and a lot of people who cannot stand the fact that this person is even surging in the polls. That is a threat to their existence.
Well, what's interesting is also that I would think that as a minority man, he would get some support, but he's actually has been facing a lot of not supportive energy from minority communities. So, for example, people like Al Sharpton, who actually supports Cuomo for whatever the hell God knows reason, has incorrectly said that Mamdani has not cross-endorsed Adrienne Adams, who's the Black woman that was on the ticket, or that is on the ticket, and criticized him for like not supporting a Black woman. But it turns out that his team has actually tried to reach out to her office and tried to do a cross endorsement that a lot of the individual Democratic candidates are actually doing.
Yeah, because it's ranked show.
Exactly. So they're showing like, oh, I would
me.
do so and so number 2, well, which is actually really nice, and it's a sweet sign of camaraderie. But like there's a lot of misinformation that's going around about Mamdani, which isn't true. For example, that. And I also learned from this Political article that I actually didn't realize, where it said, let's just find that. Conservative. Yeah. So it says, quote, African-American voters have historically been more moderate to conservative than a lot of people really account for. This comes from a former New York State Democratic Party leader. It's a vote tied to more mainstream politics and politicians, and you will see a higher turnout among those voters compared to younger ones.
Yeah.
So like that's another reason, because he's a new name, because no one's heard of him before. There, ironically, a lot of minority populations are a little bit more concerned about this newcomer. Where if in my head, I would think that it would be a good thing, right? Like, especially given how we've seen everything play out, we need new blood.
We have to stop as people of color expecting the moderate white man to save us.
Right.
The moderate white is the most, like Malcolm X said, the moderate is the most dangerous thing to progress in this nation. Because they're like, we have to do it slow. We have to do it incrementally. We have to respect the rich people's choice, or else they're going to leave the city and leave us in. And it's just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Stop begging these people to respect you.
Yeah. So another criticism that he's getting is from a recent podcast called the Bulwark podcast. I guess
the Bulwark,
Bulwark podcast. Yeah. He was guest on it. And he was asked to condemn the phrase, quote, globalize the Antifada, which I feel like I'm saying it with a Spanish accent, and I'm not sure if that's actually Antifada, yeah.
Probably saying it with it, we're cousins.
Antifada means rebellion in Arabic, right? So, and it's talking about the crisis that's happening in Gaza and Palestinians and all that, and it's usually tied to that as well. So let's hear really quickly the moment that he's getting criticism for.
Sure.
What I hear in so many is a desperate desire for equality and equal rights.
Made him uncomfortable.
Sorry.
As Mamdani was asked if the terms globalized intifada and from the river to the sea made him uncomfortable.
What I hear in so many is a desperate desire for equality and equal rights in standing up for Palestinian human rights. And I think what's difficult also is that the very word has been used by the Holocaust Museum when translating the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising.
The U.S. Holocaust.
So because he brought up the Holocaust and talked about the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, He's been getting a lot of slack for it from the Jewish community and claiming that it's, a slap in the face to reference their experience when it comes to this phrase and to associate the two and da da da, even though we're talking about if Antifada means rebellion.
And it was used by the people in the Warsaw Rebellion.
Right.
I mean, I think it was also a comedian that's saying that like the word anti-Semitic means that you come from a Semitic language. Excuse me if I'm getting that wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But Arabic also falls under that. So technically, anti-Semitic should also apply to Arabs, but they don't get to use that word. They have Islamophobia.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So it's one of these things where like Arabs or Muslims or whatever are not able to use the words that have historically been used to describe their plight.
That it's literally that, right? Like it's
It's
that, and I remember when we talked about that, the fact that anti-Semitism includes any kind of hatred against a population that speaks a Semitic language,
Yeah.
and Arabic is a Semitic language in the same way that Hebrew is.
Yeah.
So that's why technically being anti-Semitic also means being anti-Arabic in the way. So that's the irony of the situation, where people again don't look up the words of the meaning of words.
And it's also such a got you moment for these people trying to be like, you know how they were like, he seemed nervous while answering questions about Antifada. And it's like, he didn't seem nervous. He was just trying to, because it's a very delicate situation that he understands that both he has to stand up for his people, but not spread any more anti-Semitism. He wasn't trying to spread anti-Semitism with that. He was saying like, we have the same struggles. And I'm sorry that now you have become our oppressors, but you cannot deny that what is happening to us has happened to you.
Yeah.
And it's even more heartbreaking that you're the one doing this. You know, I'm sorry. It is heartbreaking that the Israeli government has gotten to this point.
Yeah. And he is expressing the sentiment. That's what he said. It's what he said. What I've been hearing is disheartened feelings about what's happening.
Yeah.
And clearly we've seen demonstrations left and right about people being upset about this issue. So he's not lying and he's not saying anything that isn't the truth.
And it's these politics are so goddamn frustrating because like literally Trump for years can be going like the election was rigged, the election was rigged, the election was rigged, and do a J6 off a lie.
Mm-hmm.
But if people who are really hurting from marginalized communities saying, I want my community to be free, all of a sudden it's what is wrong with you with all this politically divisive language?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what the hell?
Yeah, like how is this divisive if it's just true? Yeah. So just in the interest of time, I won't pull up a couple of other points, but there was a clip of Mamdani understandably being upset given what's happening. Like he's getting death threats, his family is getting attacks, like all that stuff, and he's literally just trying to do the job properly and be a real candidate. And I will say the fact that he is getting all this hate is more of a reason why we should all support him.
Yeah.
Because again, the establishment is scared for a reason, because he's going to be there. If he gets in, he'll ruffle the boat and he'll ruffle feathers and he'll
rock the boat
shake
it up, break that glass, all the phrases.
Yeah. And essentially be the change that we really do need in these spaces.
Yeah.
So changing gears to Cuomo, I felt like a good transition into looking into Cuomo and all the terrible things that he's done is the moment that I think a lot of us have seen, which was in a debate between, well, it wasn't between them, right? But it was one of the last
mayoral debates.
Exactly. So let me just.
Oh, this is epic.
Sound. Okay. So this is Andrew Cuomo and Mamdani speaking to or debating each other.
Enjoy.
He's never done any of the essentials. And now you have Donald Trump on top of all of that. And he's never dealt with what I think is the greatest national threat that we face in this president. To put a person in this seat at this time with no experience is reckless and dangerous.
To Mr. Cuomo, I have never had to resign in disgrace. I have never cut Medicaid. I have never stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from the MTA. I have never hounded the 13 women who credibly accused me of sexual harassment for their gynecological records. And I have never done those things because I am not you, Mr. Cuomo. And furthermore, the name is Mamdani. Mamdani. You should learn how to say it.
That's right.
Yeah,
baller.
The part where he spells out his name was
I don't
just
know how to
top
say it.
tier,
And that-
top tier.
And that's
But
not
and
for
that's
yeah.
also very New Yorker, I will say.
And let's
Put
not
respect on my
forget,
name.
for some re-
Absolutely. I see you.
That's what he said. But yeah,
I
yeah,
see you,
yeah. I see
Mamdani.
you. I see
Absolutely.
you.
Put
I see
respect
you.
on my name,
Yeah.
as you
He
should.
had the Air Force Ones on when he did that. He said that. But that's where, like, I can't believe Cuomo. Let's not forget, Cuomo had to resign in disgrace for, allegations of sexual harassment for, using his office to try and intimidate people.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's what's unfortunate. That's why I was shocked when I found out that he's leading in the polls. I'm like, what do you mean? This is a man who's like had to leave his previous office because he was being sorry, he's being told that, he's sexually assaulted or harassed so many different
Yeah.
women and misappropriated funds and, all these different things. So I'm like, I don't understand how the same person who's proven that he's unfit for office, that's putting it lightly, how is this even a conversation? And even worse, how is he leading in the polls?
And when he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna be tough against Trump and stuff like that," like, honestly, dude, too many established Democrats like yourself have just rolled over,
Exactly. So what
or you have a lot of policies that you actually agree with Trump, and I don't trust you.
yeah.
I
So
don't trust you.
yeah, so just pulling up his page in terms of where he stands on the issues, it's a lot of, again, great sounding language. It's a lot of similar concepts where we're going to increase supply of affordable housing. We're going to do all this stuff. He doesn't actually explain how.
Mhm.
And if we had to guess, my guess is it's going to come from taxpayer money rather than, like, and everyone taxpayer money, not charging more to the 1% that
Mhm.
isn't paying their proper taxes, right? So cool.
Cool.
So
Cuomo.
sure, you're running on that. That's great.
Mhm.
It is all real interesting that Bloomberg has already put in $8.3 million into Cuomo's campaign through a super PAC. So do you want to explain what a super PAC is for everybody?
I'm not a super PAC expert, but essentially a super
Or a
PAC,
PAC, I guess.
PAC, yeah. It's just it's sometimes it's like it's almost like a shell company where a lot of rich people put money in there that they cannot give directly to the candidate
Mhm.
because that's bribery. But you help the candidate by running ads, printing out flyers, like what it's like. Cuomo wants to help people get affordable housing. This has been paid for by the people for Andrew Cuomo.
Mhm.
That super PAC is like rich people putting money, and a lot of times you don't have to disclose who that money is coming from.
Yeah.
And what has Cuomo given up in order to get this support from the super PAC or to get this money. So it's a lot. This is how dark money gets into our government, and there's no cap on how much these super PACs can spend on a candidate to spread misinformation about someone else.
Right.
So this is where Cuomo has a bunch of PAC and super PACs, and Mamdani has 27,000 small-time donors and TikTok.
Exactly. And the reason why, I'm not sure if people realize this, the reason why there's such an emphasis on who the candidates are getting money from is because if you have one person who is, for example, Bloomberg is now responsible for 1/3 of the PAC's total 24 million haul. If you have one person funding so much of a
Bloomberg owns the
candidate,
city.
that's what people have to realize, right? Like, nothing is free. So you have to ask, why is one person giving another person so much money
Mhm.
if it's not for some kind of payback later on?
Bloomberg is in New York.
Exactly.
Even if Mayor Cuomo does one law that gives Bloomberg companies an extra 2% off on their taxes, that is probably $20-30 million. And Bloomberg just got his money back for giving a little loan of $8 million to Cuomo.
Yeah, and that's something else that Mamdani has flagged, right? So in another political article, he says, quote, Michael Bloomberg has sought to buy elections before. He spent an unbelievable amount of money when he ran for president. It's to fulfill the vision that he shared with New Yorkers many years ago, that this city should be a luxury product. And what we want the city to be is a city for working and middle class people. So again, if you are listening and you're part of the 1%, and if you have so much money, you already know who your candidate is.
Candidates.
But if you actually want to stay living in your city, if you want a fair shot at
Home and food and a job
literally just
and transportation.
right, exactly.
Mm.
And just again, friendly reminder in case you thought we were lying, right? Cuomo was forced to resign as governor in 2021 after the state attorney general's office found he sexually harassed nearly a dozen women and created a hostile work environment. He denied the allegations, but ultimately stepped down in the face of an impeachment investigation because he didn't want them to look into it. Correct. The administration was also accused of lying about the number of nursing home residents who died during the COVID pandemic, and he's currently under investigation by the DOJ. And on top of that, there's also a push to get him disbarred. So,
He's a lawyer?
yeah, apparently. I actually didn't realize that, to be honest. But
Cuomo's.
yeah, but he's also a lawyer, and there's been inside push to get him disbarred.
Yeah.
Now, admittedly, the efforts, you know, I'm surprised that it hadn't happened yet, because
Right.
again, as a lawyer myself, I just thought we were held to higher standards, so I don't know what we're waiting
Mm.
for. But yeah, so just really high level, giving an overview and a reminder to everyone. Hey, keep in mind that just because this is a known named person, this is someone we've heard of before, doesn't mean that they're actually good for the
No.
job. He has, again, already shown us what he does in positions of power. He, in the same way, like you just mentioned, Trump 1.0, he showed us who he was and people didn't believe him. Now we're really finding out, right?
Mhm.
So let's not do the same in
Let's
New York
not do
City.
Cuomo 2.0. We don't need that.
We really don't.
Mm. So remember.
Oh wait, so also he's being the DOJ investigation. They're investigating him. So sorry, there's just so much, right?
No,
so he's also being investigated.
Yeah. But we got to get it going. We got to cut it off soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the candidates. That's what's happening in New York. That's why it's important. Please, if you live in New York City, go out and vote in the primaries,
Mhm.
June 24th. Early voting is still happening.
Early voting is still happening. June 24th is the primary election day.
Yeah.
But you can go vote today, Saturday, June 21st, tomorrow, Monday. Just look up your polling location, and let's just make sure we got the right person in office.
And if you're not in New York, remember, local elections matter. This next 4 years are really gonna, I said, come down to community. So even if it's your local sheriff election, those matter more than ever now. And it's not even about it's about due process, and it's about safety, and who is the candidate that is really going to uphold the Constitution and really try to bring you about a better way of life.
Yeah.
And I don't think Cuomo's going to do that for people.
No, he's he's aligned with billionaires. At this point, I don't understand why haven't we gotten that through our heads. If someone's getting funding from billionaires, it's not because they're going to be nice or whatever the hell. And that means that it's going to be about money. That means that we're going to see social services being stripped and all that stuff. So just keep that in mind when you're in the voting poll.
Yeah. But hey, you know what? Go out there, do your civic duty, vote while we still have the ability to, because it's also very important. So vote while you still can.
Yep.
I think that's everything we want to get to for today. La co-host, as always, thank you again for putting all this together and teaching us mayors and rank changes, voting and all that stuff. It was well executed.
Thanks. Yeah. So hopefully, again, get out and vote, and look up, again, like you said, if you're not in New York, look up your own local elections and see what's coming up. Please research your candidates. Please be educated when you're voting.
Yep. And as always, hey, thank you for checking out the episode. We're going to, again, sorry it dropped a little later this week, but we're going to start getting on a much more regular, consistent basis for y'all. We're very excited to keep, expanding this, because it's been expanding. And thank you so much for people who have been listening. The podcast has been growing. I know it's weird to end this way, but I just want to thank people, because the numbers from last week to this week, people are really checking out the episode. They're loving what the information that co-host is bringing in. Maybe they like some of my humor in the middle. But I think I want to thank everybody. Remember to check out our Substack, Guerrero ENG. You've seen the ticker going down at the bottom the entire episode. We forgot to take that off. Sorry. But go to Guerrero ENG for all our content and everything. Anything else before we get out of here?
Nope, that's it. Thanks for listening.
Hey, thank you for listening. Have a good week. Stay hydrated. Eat well. Get some rest. Get back out there in the fight. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Adios.
Thanks.